Today, we've got something really interesting that many of you might recognize in principle, a Valentine's Day workbook
Yeah,
designed for kids.
exactly. And when you first glance at it, it seems like, well, just a simple way to keep children entertained around the holiday. But peeling back the layers reveals a really thoughtfully constructed set of activities. They touch on some fundamental early learning concepts.
Right. This isn't just about like festive fun. It's a surprisingly comprehensive tool. It covers everything from recognizing letters and numbers to even dipping a toe into grammar.
Mm.
Think of this deep dive as your behind-the-scenes look at the educational power cleverly disguised within these Valentine's-themed pages. Our goal today is to really unpack what skills are being taught and how the engaging theme helps it all, click for young learners.
So let's jump right in. How about we kick things off with the, what is it? Activities? They're right at the start of the workbook. What were your initial thoughts on those?
Well, the first thing you see are these matching exercises. You've got to set pairing pictures with words like flowers, love letter, teddy bear, and heart. Pretty standard Valentine stuff.
Yeah.
Then there's another group with chocolates, balloons, ring, and ribbon, and a final one with family, couple, Cupid, and calendar. It seems straightforward matching a picture to a word, but is there more to it than meets the eye?
Well, what's fascinating here, I think, is how these initial sets focus on really concrete, easily visualized items. Things directly associated with Valentine's Day, right?
Right, the obvious stuff.
Exactly. This helps build a strong foundational understanding before they move to slightly more abstract concepts like couple or family in that later set.
Okay.
So it's not just about vocabulary, it's about solidifying that symbolic link between an image and its corresponding word in a context they likely already, kind of understand.
That makes a lot of sense, starting with the tangible and then moving towards the more conceptual.
Yeah.
Okay, so building on that foundation of vocabulary and association, the workbook then moves into actively engaging with the alphabet in the which ones section.
Precisely, and here you'll find letter identification exercises. The child sees a letter, say B, and then a collection of Valentine's-themed images, and their task is to identify and, well, likely circle the pictures that begin with that letter.
Okay.
We're talking B for bear, C for candy, D for donut. And this continues across a pretty good portion of the alphabet. You've got flower for F, heart for H, key for K, and so on.
It's quite a range of letters. They cover B, C, D, F, H, K, L, M, P, R, S, T, V, W, and Y. Feels pretty comprehensive for what seems like, just a simple holiday workbook.
It is, yeah. And what's interesting is that they haven't just stuck to the most obvious starting sounds, including letters like K for key or V for vase. It broadens the child's exposure to different phonemes, different sounds.
Hmm.
The Valentine's theme in this context, it acts as a really effective hook, doesn't it? It makes the repetition inherent in learning the alphabet much more appealing than just looking at, like, lists of letters.
You're absolutely right. I mean, a whole page of just the letter B would probably lose their attention pretty quickly compared to spotting a bear among other fun pictures.
Definitely.
So after tackling the alphabet, we move on to connecting dots, a classic activity. For a reason, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. A classic and a valuable one. These dot-to-dot exercises, they create a heart, a gift, and a teddy bear, keeping that Valentine's thread going strong.
Right.
But beyond the fun of revealing a picture by connecting the numbered dots, what specific skills do you think are being developed here?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is fine motor skills, definitely.
Hmm.
The control needed to guide a pencil precisely from one tiny dot to the next.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's also a spatial reasoning element involved, needing to follow the sequence and kind of anticipate the final shape.
Precisely. These are excellent pre-writing skill builders. They really help develop hand-eye coordination and the ability to follow a visual path. Plus, the satisfaction of completing the image provides a little reward and reinforces the learning. It feels good to finish it.
Totally. Then the workbook transitions to practice writing. Here, each letter of the alphabet from A to Z is paired with a Valentine's-related word for tracing. So A is for ant, B is for bee, C is for cake. Now, some of these thematic connections feel a little stretched, wouldn't you say?
Mhm.
An igloo for I, or an X-ray for X, seems a bit random for Valentine's.
Huh. Yeah, you've hit on a common point in creating these kinds of educational materials. While the thematic link isn't always direct, like with Igloo, the primary goal here is really letter formation practice and expanding vocabulary.
Okay, yeah.
So even if an igloo doesn't exactly scream Valentine's Day, it serves as a word starting with I that the child can trace and learn. It's a practical way to cover all the letters while still trying to maintain a general holiday feel across the section.
That's a good way to look at balancing the theme with the need to be comprehensive. Okay, next step is unscrambling words. And here, the words are definitely more Valentine's themed for the most part. Love, hug, kiss, family, gifts. Uh, watch again. That one seems a bit out of place.
It does stand out a little, doesn't it? Maybe thinking of a gift watch. But for the most part, you're right. We also see words like doves, nice, joy, hands, angel, rose, flower, key, sing, dance, tea, date, card, friends, food, happy, parents, sister, and brother. Loads of them.
Yeah, good list.
This kind of activity is really valuable for reinforcing spelling patterns and boosting vocabulary within that holiday context. The child has to actively, decode the jumbled letters to form a recognizable word.
And probably adds a bit of a puzzle element, right? It makes it more engaging than just like rote memorization.
For sure.
Following that, there's a brief section on drawing shapes, just tracing basic shapes like a circle, square, triangle, rectangle, and star. Pretty fundamental stuff.
Absolutely fundamental. And a good reminder that early learning encompasses this wide range of skills. These shape tracing activities, they help refine fine motor control and also the visual discrimination of different geometric forms. That's foundational for later spatial reasoning in math and, well, other areas too.
Then we have quite a few coloring activities. The instructions mention coloring based on provided colored images, which seems like it would reinforce visual color recognition and, of course, continues to develop those important fine motor skills. Plus, let's be honest, it's just a fun, creative outlet for kids.
Exactly. And by keeping the images within the Valentine's theme, it helps maintain the overall engagement with the workbook's topic, keeps it cohesive.
Now, this next section was a bit of a surprise, at least to me, pronouns. It presents fill-in-the-blank sentences with a selection of pronouns to choose from. For example, blank, am a boy, with options like he, him, our, mine, they, me, she, her, it.
Right.
Or blank is running while drinking, with a slightly different set of choices.
Yeah, this is where the workbook really starts to delve into basic grammar concepts. Introducing pronouns at this stage is actually quite effective. It helps build an intuitive understanding of how sentences are structured.
Interesting.
The sentences are kept simple, but they require the child to think about the function of different pronouns. Possessive, subject, object. It's laying some really early groundwork for sentence construction.
It's definitely more advanced than I initially anticipated from a holiday-themed workbook. Following that, we move into counting activities. These have kids counting various Valentine's-related objects grouped within a box, things like hearts, envelopes, and candies.
This is a very straightforward way to build numeracy skills. Physically counting objects helps to solidify number recognition and what educators call one-to-one correspondence, basically. The understanding that each object represents a single unit.
Got it.
And presenting these counting tasks with Valentine's imagery just makes the practice more visually appealing and relevant to the current theme.
Right, the context makes it less abstract, less like just numbers on a page. Following the counting, we have more or less or equal activities. This presents two sets of Valentine's-themed objects, and the child has to use the greater than, less than, or equal to symbols to compare the quantities in each set.
This introduces the fundamental concepts of comparison in mathematics. It's not just about being able to count, it's about understanding the relative size of different sets. Using those visual representations, like groups of hearts or candies, helps to make those abstract symbols greater than, less than, equal to more concrete and understandable for young learners.
Makes sense. Then we get to what's my lowercase. This is a great exercise, I think. Kids are shown a capital letter and then have to identify its corresponding lowercase form from a set of options, and it runs through the entire alphabet, which is quite thorough.
Absolutely crucial for early literacy development. Reinforcing that connection between uppercase and lowercase letters helps to build visual memory and recognition. Those are essential for reading fluency later on.
Definitely. And rounding things out, we have an activity checklist, where the child can presumably mark off the activities as they complete them.
Right, a bit of tracking.
And a certificate of achievement with a space to write their name. It's a nice touch, provides a sense of accomplishment, doesn't it?
Exactly. These elements offer positive reinforcement and a feeling of completion, which can be incredibly motivating for young children. And that personalized certificate adds that extra bit of encouragement. Hey, look what I did.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and we shouldn't overlook the special note at the beginning. It mentions that proceeds from the workbook will go towards helping children who lack the necessary technology for online learning. It also includes terms of use, outlining how the workbook can be used, and its copyright. It's interesting to see those elements even in a resource for young children.
It provides a nice bit of context, doesn't it, and explains the purpose behind the workbook, which is a thoughtful addition. The terms of use are pretty standard practice for digital resources, to protect the creator's work.
All right, standard, but good to see. So when we take a step back and look at the whole picture, what are the key takeaways here? This seemingly simple Valentine's Day workbook is actually a pretty impressive tool for early childhood education.
It really is. It cleverly weaves together a fun and engaging theme with a surprisingly broad range of foundational skills practice. It tackles literacy through alphabet recognition, letter formation, word decoding, and even those early grammar concepts with pronouns.
Yeah.
It builds numeracy skills through counting and comparing quantities, and it consistently works on developing fine motor skills through activities like tracing, connecting dots, and coloring, all that stuff.
It's quite remarkable how many different learning objectives are addressed within these few pages, all under the umbrella of Valentine's Day. It really shines a light on how effective everyday themes can be as, like, vehicles for learning.
Absolutely. And, this raises a really interesting point for our listeners to consider. Thinking about how this Valentine's Day workbook uses a familiar theme to engage young learners and teach foundational skills, what other everyday themes, perhaps beyond holidays, could be really effective in creating engaging educational materials? It makes you wonder about the potential to tap into a child's everyday experiences, maybe things like going to the park or meal times or animals to make learning even more fun and relevant. Something to think about.